Peter stopped walking when he heard the sound. A phone was ringing. Inside the abandoned mansion, Peter looked slowly at the old house across the street. The mansion had been abandoned for more than 25 years. So why was a phone ringing inside it tonight? Trim, trim, trim. Peter felt cold. Suddenly, everybody in town knew the story of that mansion. People said a family disappeared there many years ago. After that night, nobody ever lived there again. Peter stared at the dark windows. No lights, no movement, no sound, except the phone. Then something strange happened. One curtain moved slowly. Upstairs. Peter froze immediately. Someone was inside. Or something. The ringing suddenly stopped. Silence covered the street. Peter started walking away, nervously. But then, a yellow light turned on. Inside the mansion. Right beside the window, where the curtain moved. Peter stopped again. His heart was beating faster now. The light stayed on for several seconds. Then it turned off again. Darkness returned. Trim. The phone started ringing once more. This time, it sounded louder, closer. Peter swallowed nervously. He knew he should leave. But curiosity was stronger than fear. Slowly, Peter crossed the empty street. Dead leaves moved under his shoes. The iron gate was already open. Peter stopped near the entrance path. Fresh footprints covered the wet ground. Someone had entered the mansion. Recently. Peter looked carefully at the footprints. Bare feet. Small feet. Like a child. A cold feeling ran through his body. Then he heard the phone again. Trim. Trim. Peter walked toward the mansion entrance. The front door was slightly open. A weak yellow light flickered somewhere inside. Peter pushed the door. Slowly. Creak. The smell of dust and old wood filled the air. Everything looked abandoned, but not completely. A candle was burning near the staircase. Peter stared at it in confusion. The candle was new. Wax still melted slowly down the side. Someone was definitely inside the mansion. Then the phone stopped ringing again. Silence filled the house. Peter heard a floorboard creak upstairs. Creak. He looked toward the second floor immediately. Nothing moved. But now the fear felt real. Then Peter noticed another thing. Family photographs covered one wall. Most of the faces were scratched away violently, except one. A small boy smiled directly at the camera. Peter moved closer, slowly. The boy looked exactly like him. Peter stepped backward in shock. "That's impossible," he whispered. Suddenly, the phone rang upstairs. Trim, trim. Peter jumped slightly. This time, the sound felt aggressive, angry, almost desperate. Peter looked at the staircase. Then he slowly climbed upward. Each wooden step creaked loudly beneath him. Creak, creak, creak. The second-floor hallway was darker. Torn wallpaper hung from the walls. One ceiling light flickered weakly. Flash, flash, flash. The phone continued ringing. At the end of the hallway, Peter walked toward the sound carefully. Then he noticed a bedroom door moving slowly by itself. Creak. Peter stopped breathing for a moment. Darkness waited inside the room. Then the door slowly closed again. Slam. Peter's hands trembled now, but the phone continued ringing. Trim, Trim. Peter finally reached the last room. Inside, there was only a small wooden table and an old black telephone. Ringing alone. Peter stared at the phone nervously. Then he noticed something horrifying. The telephone had no wires connected to it, but it continued ringing anyway. Trim. Trim. Peter slowly reached for the receiver. His hand trembled badly. Finally, he answered the phone. Silence. Only static. Shh. Peter listened carefully. Then a woman whispered softly, "Peter." Peter's blood turned cold. "Who are you?" he asked immediately. The woman breathed softly into the phone. Then she whispered again, "You should not be here." Peter looked around the room nervously. "Where are you?" he asked. The woman ignored the question. Instead, she whispered, "He knows you came back." Peter felt panic growing inside him. "Who?" he asked weakly. Suddenly, all the lights upstairs turned off at once. Darkness swallowed the hallway. Peter froze completely. Then he heard breathing behind him. Slow, heavy, very close. Peter turned around quickly. Nobody was there. But fresh, wet footprints now covered the hallway floor. Bare feet, child-sized. And they were moving toward him, one step at a time. Peter backed away slowly. The woman suddenly whispered loudly through the phone, "Run!" Immediately, a deep growl exploded from the darkness nearby. Peter dropped the phone instantly. Crash. Something moved violently at the end of the hallway. Fast. Unnatural. Peter ran immediately. Heavy footsteps chased him upstairs. Boom! 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 The walls shook around him. Peter almost fell down the staircase. He grabbed the railing desperately. Then he looked upstairs one last time. A tall, dark figure stood at the end of the hallway. Its face remained hidden in darkness, but its eyes glowed pale yellow. The figure tilted its head slowly. Then it whispered, "Peter." Peter ran toward the mansion entrance in terror. The chandelier above him started swinging violently. Creak! Creak! Every light inside the mansion suddenly turned on. Peter froze for one horrifying second. The mansion no longer looked abandoned. It looked alive. Shadows moved inside every room. Human shadows, watching him, waiting. Peter finally reached the front door. He pulled it open desperately. Cold rain hit his face hard outside. Peter ran into the street without looking back. Behind him, every light inside the mansion suddenly turned off again. Darkness returned instantly. Peter stopped running several streets away. His chest burned from fear and exhaustion. Rain covered his face completely. Then his phone vibrated inside his pocket. Unknown number. Peter stared at the screen in horror. Slowly, he answered the call. Silence. Then the same woman whispered softly, "Peter." Peter closed his eyes tightly. "Who are you?" he whispered. The woman answered immediately, "I'm your mother." Peter stopped breathing. Because Peter had been adopted when he was 3 years old. Suddenly, everything started making sense. The mansion, the photographs, the little boy, the familiar feeling inside the house. The woman spoke one final time. "Never return to that mansion." Peter tried to speak, but the call suddenly ended. Click. Peter slowly lowered the phone. Rain continued falling silently around him. Far away, on top of the dark hill, the abandoned mansion stood completely still. Then A light turned on upstairs again. Peter stared at the distant window in terror. And finally, the phone inside the mansion started ringing again. Trim, trim 'em.
Did you enjoy the story? Subscribe. New stories every week.